Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, October 22nd, 2022, and today we're going to be talking about the Arizona governor's race and Kari Lake, the Republican nominee for governor, who is doing significantly better than many other Republicans are across the nation in this extremely competitive and important governor's race in the state of Arizona. Now, for context, the state of Arizona is a state that President Biden won in the 2020 election by 0.3%. This was the first time a Democrat had won the state since 1996, and it was quite substantial. The fact is that Democrats won the state of Arizona for the first time in the 21st century, and they did so under a candidate like Joe Biden. And what I mean by that is that Joe Biden, in many regards, was viewed as the most electable Democrat when it came down to these races. However, he did end up underperforming both Kyrsten Sinema and Mark Kelly when it came down to his presidential race, which meant that there were voters out there that were more inclined to vote for a Democrat that wasn't Joe Biden. And when you came down to the House election results as well, the Democratic Party also came out ahead by winning 5 out of the 9 seats in Arizona. This was the first time this had happened in over a decade, which was 2018. It was maintained in 2020, but it looks like that is intended to be gone in 2022 post-redistricting. But that really isn't the point of this video, but rather just context to add into our understanding of the governor's race and where the partisan ideologies on both sides and where the partisan performance can be expected, or rather cannot be expected. The Arizona Senate race in 2020 was also an indicator that the race itself in Arizona was almost always going to be competitive. It isn't going to let me show you the results here because I'm going to have to log in because I'm out of free articles. I'm not actually recording on my traditional computer or laptop. I'm recording on an iMac, I think that's what this is. I don't have one of my own. I'm just using somebody else's so I can actually end up getting this video out. It's like 9 a.m. on a Saturday because I'm going to be busy for the rest of the day, so I needed to get this video out and done before anything else had actually proceeded. But essentially, what we know from the Senate race in 2020 was that a 2.4% margin for Mark Kelly over Martha McSally was not that significant, which meant that Arizona was always going to be a state that was going to be competitive regardless of really who the candidates were. But specifically in the governor's race now, we are working with an environment where the Democrats, quite frankly, could have done significantly better than where they are doing right now. Kari Lake, for context, is a TV personality, someone who actually used to be a Democrat, might I add. She was a Democrat. She voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. So for a long period of time, she was on the left side of the political spectrum. She switched to the Republican Party, became a Make America Great Again type of candidate, very similar to what we have seen amongst white working class voters across the nation, but specifically in Arizona, it seemed to have resonated well, because she won her primary over Karen Taylor Robson, who was endorsed by Vice President Mike Pence and Governor Doug Ducey, the Republican governor of the state, who currently holds the elected office right now, versus Donald Trump's endorsement for Kari Lake. And to be fair, the Republican primary was quite contentious, but that really doesn't matter now that we're heading into a general election where the Republican Party is entirely unified behind Kari Lake as we head into November, and Katie Hobbs, as the Democrat, was practically cleared the field for when it came down to her bid. She is the incumbent Secretary of State, someone who knows how to win statewide, but has seemingly fallen off in terms of electability for this race. This comes as a result of many, many moves, but none more important more recently than her decision to not debate Kari Lake. Her decision here came as a surprise to many Democrats. People thought that she was going to be very willing to have a debate, but ultimately Katie Hobbs says that she does not want to have a debate against Kari Lake, and thus Kari Lake has been platformed unilaterally by the mainstream media because they still present the opportunity for Kari Lake to speak to the voters in a debate-style format, but just without an opponent. Very similar to what we saw happen with Jon Ossoff and David Perdue, very similar to what we saw happen with many other candidates, what we saw happen with Warnock and Walker when it came down to that second debate in the state of Georgia. What we have seen is that candidates that typically do not show up either think A, they are fine and going to win, or B, are afraid of losing by an even larger margin. I can't tell which one the Hobbs campaigns actually thinks is going to be due. It might not be either. Reading the reasoning behind Katie Hobbs, though, I think that in one sense it might make sense if we were to talk about a state where a debate really didn't matter, but it absolutely does here. If you're talking about someone who you believe is, undermining the democracy that we have in America, undermining our free and fair elections, especially as someone who serves in that position, you are in a position of power where you can question those lies. You can question the idea that the election was rigged in the state of Arizona because, quite frankly, Kari Lake has called for the arrestment of Katie Hobbs, has called for the arresting of Katie Hobbs in a rally with President Trump when she was originally announcing her candidacy. I mean, these are things where you would rather have someone actually dispelling these rumors, dispelling these lies on national television, on statewide television, rather than just saying no to the debate because you do not believe in platforming them, or potentially you don't think that debate is going to go quite well. I will also say that my expectations for the Democrats in Arizona have gone quite down as well. I think it's not just the polling numbers now that show Kari Lake ahead when Katie Hobbs maintained a lead, not for super long, but still had a lead when it came down to the overall ballot here. But the governor's race in 2018 also, I think, has really told me that Republicans can outperform the top line ticket, typically the Senate race, by quite a substantial amount. And they did it in 2018. They did it in 2014. You can see here in Arizona that Doug Ducey defeated David Garcia by 14.9%, was polling on average up by about 16. He never was going to lose his election. In fact, the interesting thing, though, was that Doug Ducey himself has now been ostracized, has been vilified by the Arizona GOP, vilified by President Donald Trump because he refused to overturn the election results. Kari Lake, I don't think, would be the same way. She has been very, very clear that she believes the 2020 election was rigged, that it was stolen by Democrats away from President Trump, and that is in itself a crime, that these people should be arrested. Even though there is no validity behind those claims, she very well could become the next governor, and quite frankly, she is the favorite to become the next governor of the state of Arizona, which means should Biden win it in 2024, there's no guarantee that she actually signs off on that election result. And despite that, voters are inclined to vote for her because Katie Hobbs does not seem to be getting their attention, does not seem to be getting their, chance or shot at victory. And the interesting thing, though, is that Katie Hobbs originally started out as the underdog, but then she started to claim a lead over Kari Lake. She started to get to a point, or at one point in time, she had a 62% chance at victory, but her odds have started to dwindle. They started to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, and now, especially amongst more recent data, Kari Lake is starting out and going into Election Day with a very significant advantage. The interesting thing, though, is that voters in Arizona are not a monolith. They're not voting, or not necessarily monolith, but they're not voting all in one direction. You can see here in the Senate race that Mark Kelly has a pretty substantial chance at victory, though the odds have decreased from 83%, which was the peak for Mark Kelly. They're down to 74%, which quite frankly isn't too far down. Blake Masters does have a reasonable shot at victory, but Mark Kelly also is going to do quite well and will very well outrun Katie Hobbs when it comes down to the governor election versus the Senate election. The political betting markets, though, are a lot more bullish on the odds for Katie Hobbs. You can see here that she has just 23 cents for a yes share, and that actually is different because Hobbs was the favorite throughout the first 3 weeks of August. You can see here that she was the favorite, then Kari Lake overclaimed, and then it started to be distancing itself, but now Katie Hobbs has reached an ultimately new low at 23 cents. Kari Lake at the highest point she has ever been this entire election cycle, and it's 17 days until the election. The highest point of the entire cycle with 2 years in counting, and we're 17 days away, and the GOP is at an extremely high point, which is also in conjunction with a very, very national shift. Pennsylvania on predicted going to Dr. Oz, Nevada on predicted going to Adam Laxalt, Georgia on predicted going to Herschel Walker. The only one holding out is the state of Arizona, and what's happening in the governor's race, well, it's losing for the Democratic Party very, very significantly. And this is the product of Kari Lake being an exceptional nominee for the GOP despite her extremism. I am quite baffled at her ability to win over voters in the swing state because Kari Lake is so extreme. Democrats were hoping that Kari Lake was the nominee, and to be fair, I think if Karen Taylor Robson was on this ballot, this race would be likely Republican. But I also think that there was a misstep here by Democrats. I mean, Kari Lake probably would have won the primary without Democrats hoping that she had won it. But I will say that if they had maybe funded Karen Taylor Robson or had pushed against Kari Lake more in the primary rather than allowing voters to elect her, maybe they would have lost the governorship. But if Biden was to win the state in 2024, they would not have lost the electoral votes. I would not be shocked if Kari Lake took it on herself to overturn the 2024 election. I truly think that she would. And I think that it will happen. I think we are set to see a governor intervene in a state that is a swing state and take electoral votes away from President Biden. And I think that right now, we are not looking at it as a stream as we normally should, but that's just the reality of our new America. That is just the reality of what extremism can do to both sides of the aisle, specifically in this case, the Republican Party. What extremism, when it comes down to challenging free and fair elections, can do which has jeopardized our democracy. But at the end of the day, Arizona voters clearly favor Kari Lake over Katie Hobbs. You can see also in 2014 that Republicans did quite well when it came down to the governor election. Not as important, but just something to think about. I think one thing that the Democratic Party might be holding on to for hope is that in 2018, when it came down to the Senate race, Martha McSally was supposed to win. Both Sinema and McSally were serving in the House of Representatives, and they both were doing well in the polls. But Sinema started out with a pretty substantial lead over Martha McSally in the months of July and August. You can see the lead here at different points in time: 8 points, 7 points, 8 points, 7 points, went down to 6, and then Martha McSally started to rise. Kirsten Sinema went back up, but then McSally ended up taking the lead, and on Election Day, led by 1 point. Sinema, on the other hand, ended up winning by 2.3%. She won by 2.3%, when McSally was supposed to win by 1. So what Democrats, I think, are trying and hoping might happen is that there is an underestimation of Katie Hobbs' support. But quite frankly, I don't think that's going to happen, because this is not 2018. This is not 2020. This is not an election year where the Democratic Party is in an extremely favorable position nationwide or in a somewhat favorable position nationwide. The Democrats are the underdogs in practically every single competitive race at this point. It used to be different a month ago. It used to be different, quite frankly, 2 weeks ago. But a lot can change in American politics, and we know this. But it also means that a lot can change between now and November. But with Kari Lake winning this, there will be severe and significant national implications beyond just this governorship. But what also will be an embarrassment for the Democratic Party. Arizona is getting bluer every year that we move on, which means if Republicans are winning now, sure, they might not win in the future, but it's just 4 more years that Republicans are going to hold on to the governorship, 4 more years that they will likely hold on to the state legislature, and 4 more years, potentially, of President Donald Trump, depending on the importance of the electors in the state of Arizona. That is what should really be shocking for Democrats here. And as I said, my expectations for Katie Hobbs have gone quite down. You can see at the start of the 2021 predictions for 2022, when I made them for the governorship, August 8th, 2021, Arizona was a lean blue state. And this was a point in time, sure, where President Biden was approved of. He was up nationwide by, 10 points, and it was a good look for the Democratic Party. But then we started to hit September, and I got a little bit more weird about the Democratic Party's chances in Arizona. Then came November after Glenn Youngkin's victory, but even then Arizona was tilt red. Think about that for a moment. It was tilt red after Glenn Youngkin flipped a Biden double-digit state. That's how bullish I was on the Republican Party's chances at victory. But then it changed back. Went to tilt blue, lean blue, tilt blue, tilt blue, tilt blue, lean blue, tilt blue. And in my most recent projection, for the first time ever on my forecast, Arizona is now not only red, but lean red. Not only is it in the Republican column, but it is in the best case for the GOP that it has been in the entirety of my predictions, 17 days out. So what does that tell me as someone who looks at this from an analytical point of view? That Republicans have done something right and Democrats have done something wrong. Objectively, Kari Lake is running a better campaign in Arizona, and despite her extremism, is more than likely going to win over Katie Hobbs. That is why I look at this and say, the Democratic Party is in a position of power right now where they need to be walking better candidates, not even better candidates, but also making the right moves because they have the ability to field good candidates. The reason why the Senate is competitive right now is because the Republicans have fielded wrong candidates and Democrats have exceptional ones. They have Mark Kelly in Arizona. They have Raphael Warnock in Georgia. They have other candidates across the United States who, quite frankly, hold up to a very high standard. Republicans, on the other hand, Herschel Walker, Blake Masters, Dr. Oz, these are not people who are impressive, and the only reason why they might win is because of our national environment. That is the only and sole reason why Republicans might win the Senate. Just because of our national environment. It's so favorable for the GOP, which means that Republicans in Arizona are in a better position because they're taking advantage of the national environment. They're applying it to someone who, quite frankly, I would not say is the best candidate the GOP could have had. I think that would have been Karen Taylor Robson by far. But it doesn't mean that she's going to lose. She's not Blake Masters. She is a TV personality. She knows how to speak to people. She knows how to win an electorate. And while Katie Hobbs has electoral experience, that isn't to say she is always making the right moves. And this decision to not debate at the Arizona governor's race is something that voters seemingly did not like, is something that voters do not approve of, and the numbers flipped after this decision. And Kari Lake is using this to her advantage. So altogether, my takeaway from this is that Kari Lake will probably win the governorship in the state of Arizona, but there are significant implications of that happening. But it doesn't matter seemingly to voters, because Katie Hobbs does not seem to be the right candidate for this point in time. She certainly was, for a long period of time. But getting closer to Election Day, it seems as if she is no longer in that position, and that means that Democrats are probably going to lose Arizona not only this election, but regardless of the popular vote in the next election, they will lose that one as well. No end screen today because I'm on my a different computer, not mine, somebody else's, but I will be seeing you guys in a video a little bit later today. It was recorded yesterday, so I apologize for that. It was something about Dr. Oz and John Fetterman, so it'll be quite an interesting watch. I would definitely recommend checking it out. Again, update on the election night. We'll be getting out sometime this week. It will be very, very good. It'll be a Senate election night. I'll be doing a governor election night right before the election. No House election night, I don't think, this time around. I haven't given it much time, and I quite frankly do not have the ability to go through every single race at this point. I would just say that we're going to do some House analysis in the future, but as of right now, I would say count on an election night for the Senate and governorship before the time we reach November. Also count on a live stream that I will be having on that evening, hopefully, depending on my ability and schoolwork, because college is in midterm season, not presidential or not midterm election season, but midterm season on the academic front. So that'll be quite interesting to balance as well. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.